School of Investment brings you update on pressure on Indian startups due to Silicon Valley Bank default. This is indeed a serious matter and requires immediate attention. So without further ado, let's dive into it. For those who are not aware, Silicon Valley Bank was one of India's leading banks that provided funding and support to the startups. Over the years, it has emerged as a key player in the Indian startup ecosystem, helping several young companies in raising funding and scaling up their businesses. Dozens of young Indian startups backed by the SVB, likes of YCBacked Sequoia India, Lightspeed, SoftBank, and Bessemer Venture Partners banked with Silicon Valley Bank. Additionally, more than 60 YCBacked Indian startups have more than $250,000 stuck in accounts with Silicon Valley Bank, and nearly 24 have more than $1 million tied with the lender. While some Indian firms couldn't timely yank their deposits from Silicon Valley Bank because they didn't have another U.S. banking account readily available to hold that capital, many venture capitalists recounted. Indian gaming firm Nazara said two of its subsidiaries had about $7.75 million stuck in SVB. Nearly all Indian SaaS startups with large presence in the U.S. banked with Silicon Valley Bank, a partner at one of the top venture funds said. Over a dozen Indian SaaS unicorns and many more soonicorns are headquartered in the U.S. A U.S.-based investor, who requested anonymity speaking candidly, said he knew for a fact that many Indian firms had about $4 to $10 million parked in their SVB accounts. However, things took an unexpected turn when the bank announced its decision to shut down its operations in India. The news came as a shock to many startups that were heavily dependent on Silicon Valley Bank's support. It has put the funding and future of several young Indian startups in jeopardy. The shutdown of Silicon Valley Bank has left many startup founders scrambling to find alternative options to raise funding. Many startups that had ongoing funding talks with the bank are now left in the lurch, causing a great deal of uncertainty and worry for them. Many experts predict that the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in India could have a ripple effect on the startup ecosystem in the country, affecting the funding environment and the overall sentiment of investors towards Indian startups. In such a situation, some startups are turning towards other players in the industry, hoping to secure funding from them. Others are exploring newer options like crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending, and angel investing. Some experts believe that this collapse could turn out to be a blessing in disguise for the Indian startup ecosystem. It could be an opportunity for startups to be less dependent on a single player in the industry and diversify their funding sources. Wrapping up, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in India has indeed created a challenging situation for many Indian startups. It's a reminder that the startup ecosystem is still vulnerable, and one cannot rely on a single institution for funding and support. However, as they say, every crisis presents an opportunity. This could be a chance for startups to become more resilient and self-reliant, ultimately making the Indian startup ecosystem stronger and dynamic. That's all for today's video. Stay tuned for more exciting content in the future. Thank you for watching.